Here's my pal. You got it, Ron Darling, who obviously with the TBS and the Us and the Mets, he's flying. Ronnie, I just made an interesting point, and listen, you don't want to say it because you don't want to jinx him. I think if deGrom is healthy, the Mets are going to win a pennant. I know the Dodgers are sitting there, and I get it, but the Dodgers are not matching Scherzer and deGrom 1-2, and plus the Dodgers' ninth inning is not Diaz. I know Diaz hasn't done it in the postseason, but he's been unhittable. I think the Mets, if deGrom can piggyback, I think they're the team to beat in the National League. That's a strong statement. Let me hear your thoughts on it. Go ahead.
It is, especially after watching the Dodgers and what they did to the Padres this weekend. Hey, listen, there's a long way to go. But when you look at the Mets team, you see a postseason ball club. When you look at their team and see Scherzer and deGrom up at the top, they become a real threat to any ball club. And one of the questions you always have to ask, and remember, we have this different kind of wild card setting where you're going to have a series instead of one game. So those teams are not going to be able to set their pitching as opposed to the two teams that get the division entry and buy-in will be able to set up their pitching. We've always had to ask this one question. Who starts game one and who starts game two? And I don't think anyone answers that question better than the Mets.
100%. Here's an interesting one for you, and I know you don't want to bother anybody, but it's you and me. Make believe we're just hanging out in Darien, Connecticut.
All right.
Who would pitch game right now? Who would Buck tab to pitch game three?
Well, game three. That's an interesting. I think right now it would be between between Walker and Bassett. I know Carrasco's had an amazing year, but Bassett has had a good year as well. And Taijuan Walker, except for his last start, really was the pitcher that emerged when Max Scherzer went down for that month and a half. That Walker was their best pitcher for a long period of time. So right now, I would say he would deserve that spot, but Bassett is real close.
I don't want to make this so much Mets-centric. I'll get to some other teams in a minute. Are you satisfied that the Mets did enough with their DH situation, lefty-righty? They needed another bat. Are you satisfied they improved enough there last week with Vogelbach and, of course, Ruff? What's your take on that?
Well, a couple things. One, I think they were a really good ball club before. I think when you start to add players, you have to make sure they're the kind of players that will fit in with a clubhouse that seems very tight. I think those guys certainly are that type. We sat here a year ago, and when we saw the Braves' moves with those 4 different outfielders, no one thought that was going to be the greatest move and didn't think that the Braves had changed themselves into a powerhouse. But those 4 outfielders that they acquired, Anthopoulos acquired, ended up being a big part of that team and the reason why they won the World Series. So maybe Vogelbach and maybe Nate Quinn and others can provide the same thing that Rosario and Duvall and Peterson and Soler did for the Braves last year.
All right, San Diego, the Hader, obviously Drury, they bring Soto in. Yeah. It's one thing to win the deadline and win the winner, and they have won a lot of that because, Tatis's contract and Machado 1 year. They've done good in that spot, but you know better than anybody, when you're wearing that bullseye on your back now and you bring all these guys in, that's a different mindset for a franchise, and obviously they struggled with it this weekend at Dodger Stadium. How about San Diego going forward with the pressure now that they need to win? Let me hear your take there.
I think they're going to be fine. Notwithstanding what happened this weekend, I think they're a ball club that for the rest of the 7 weeks plus, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to get Tatis back soon. That's going to make a difference as well. But I remember when Joe Maddon was the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, he always felt as though they had to get by winning in Yankee Stadium, winning in Fenway Park, if they were ever going to contend in the AL East. And I think at some point, the Padres, who have 9 more games with the Dodgers, are going to have to really make a statement at some point. I mean, they've been outscored 55-18 this year in 9 games or 10 games. The Dodgers have won 8 of them. They have not been able to win at Chavez Ravine. I think they're one win in their last 13 games there. So, right now, I think they will proceed and probably play a great brand of baseball for the next month. But at some point, they will have to make a statement when they play the Dodgers.
All right, the Phillies, let's not sleep on them. This is the highest. They've been over 500 in about 4 years. Harper eventually will play. They're laying in the weeds quietly. They're putting themselves in a good spot. to get that last spot in the NL, because with the Braves, Phillies, Padres, Dodgers, and the NL Central winner, Phillies might give themselves a break against the second-place team in that Milwaukee-St. Louis caravan deal. But the Phillies have done a very, very good job. You've seen a lot of them. Mets played them a lot early in the year and beat them. But Philadelphia has played very, very well since Girardi and Rob Thompson's come in there. Thoughts on the Phils?
Well, the Phils did not play that well early in the year, so the Mets certainly caught them at a better time. You asked before about, the Mets with Scherzer and, of course, deGrom. The answer for the Philadelphia Phillies is a pretty good answer when you have Wheeler and Nola, or Nola and Wheeler, whatever order that you want to use that in. That being said, they're averaging about 6 runs per game. You knew their offense was going to be there. They seem to be more relaxed in the last month that I've seen them in quite some time. And it's the Phillies have really emerged. They really could have at some point wilted with the kind of start that they had, but they did not. That reveals a lot of character on their part. And the Mets play the Phillies coming up this weekend. It's going to be an interesting test after they play the Reds.
And last question, I'll throw a little curveball at you. You're a Yaley. This is a very smart person you are talking to right now. And you probably really treasured the wordsmith ability of the late, great Vin Scully. Yeah. Tell us about that for a sec. Go ahead.
Well, Vin was not only the greatest of all time, but if you know the Los Angeles area, to become, what he became for that entire Dodger nation was something. We've known him about being around for 67 years, doing some of the biggest games that you and I ever watched in our life. But I always take it back maybe to being Mets-centric with a call on the ball that went between Buckner's legs. Don't ever forget this. It was 21 words he used, and then he laid out for 3 minutes. That wouldn't happen with most announcers today. He had so much confidence and was so great in his ability. He knew that in 21 succinct words, he could describe one of the most iconic plays in World Series history and then not say a thing for 3 minutes. That says a lot about how great he was.
By the bag, it cuts through Buckner, and the Mets win it. Oh, it's one of the great calls. I love it. You're the best there, Ronnie. We'll keep you posted. We'll get you on that golf course. Ronnie's about a 2 handicap. We'll get him out there and have some fun. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.